Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and some mixed media. You guys always love it when I do more mixed media type cards and I'm throwing everything but the kitchen sink. And that's what I did. I am combining elements from the Simon Says Stamp February 2025 card kit, which I've already done a video unboxing and I made a couple ephemera type cards. I'll have that linked in the end screen at the end of the video. So I'm combining the stamp set from the kit and a couple other things, as well as I'm combining it with a very unexpected sort of a set, but it all works. It works. The Boo Crazy stamp set from Tim Holtz, which there is also a coordinating die set for this, along with other Tim Holtz sets. If you're not aware, Simon Says Stamps started doing coordinating die sets for a bunch of the Tim Holtz stamp sets about a year and a half ago. Something. I will link to that category. You can check it out because it's always nice having some coordinating wafer dies. So I combined that set with the set that comes in the February kit, which you can also get individually. I'll have links. And I've got like sprays. I use 3 different kinds of distress sprays. I use spray stain, oxide spray, Spritz, like distress Spritz, inks, archival ink. I use yupo and we'll get into it. We'll get into it. Everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It's what helps pay the bills, keeps the heaters running, enables me to keep bringing out content. At the very end, I'll also link to my Valentine playlist. Another reminder, not all my cards are specifically like Valentine. I like to make them more open-ended, generic. I would send these to anyone, and even these ones, I would give these to anybody, just for fun. Because yeah, that's the name of the game. And I think that's it for all of the housekeeping and rambling and whatnot. Let's just get into making these cards. So we're going to start off with making the backgrounds. So I have my mixed media mat. This is the one that's sized to fit the travel size Tim Holtz glass media mat. It's got the little weighted corners. And distress watercolor paper. And the big spiderweb stamp from this Boo Crazy set. And archival ink. Now, I don't use archival inks much at all. I just don't. But that said, do I have all the distress colors of archival inks? Yes. Have I used them? For the most part, no. So I pulled out, this is Salvaged Patina archival ink. Reason I chose this. Tim had mentioned it in one of his videos last year. I couldn't even tell you when. I watched them all. But he mentioned how it kind of resists the distress inks, different things. Like archival is its own little beast. And he had done a technique using it, and it's stuck in the back of my mind. So I was going to stamp this with the Salvaged Patina archival ink. And the stamp is big. And you saw me literally drop it on the cardstock. It's fine. Big stamps like this, if you don't have a stamp positioner or, great big acrylic blocks, die cut plates. I showed this in a video years ago. And I was going to do this face up like I normally do and just press the cardstock into it. But yeah, stick it to my die cutting plate now that it's properly stuck to said die cutting plate. And then I can decide where I want to stamp it. So archival ink, it does resist a bit. It's weird. The formula is very different than your regular dye-based inks, water reactive inks. Because archival is permanent, hence archival. So after I'd stamped that onto these pieces of distressed watercolor paper, I'm using spray stains to do some ink smushing. So I'm using shaded lilac, and I'd sprayed it onto my craft mat, and it beads up just like distress inks will. And then I sprayed a little bit of water, and then you're just mushing the cardstock in. This is fun. I highly encourage anyone to do it, especially in this way too. I've shown it in other ways, where you use a stamp packaging or a clear sleeve so you can see, have more control. But I also recommend just try it. Do it like this, You get what you get. You don't get upset. All my little Timisms just in the back of my brain constantly. So it's fun, and it's true. You will just get what you get. You never know what's going to happen when you start playing, and it's fun. So I did shaded lilac, and then I'm going in with Spun Sugar Distress Spray Stain, and same thing. And I'm drying between the layers, because if you leave everything wet and you're trying to smush, it's all just going to become a blob. There's not going to be any of those splotchy bits. You're not going to get any layering, because wet on wet, it just blends together. Wet on dry layers. So I was using my heat tool to dry in between the layers. And then I'm going in with Frayed Burlap Distress Ink and just kind of blending it around the perimeter, putting it on here like I was channeling Tim Holtz. I don't often think to, really grunge it up and start adding brown, but once you start, it's fun. So I just did that quick little ink blend with the Frayed Burlap and then held my distress sprayer really high up and only pressed the nozzle halfway, so you get, again, the splotchy bits of water, because all of this is water reactive except for that web that I stamped in the Archival ink. So then after spraying with the water, I press the paper towel on so it picks up all those droplets, and that's how you get those awesome splotchy bits and texture. And then more spray. Now I'm using Salvaged Patina Distress Oxide spray. Oxides have pigments in them, so they're a little more opaque. I'm not using a whole lot of this. I just sprayed a bit onto the craft mat and then sprayed it with water and then broke it up with my fingers so that it's not in one big splotch, and then just pressed a bit of this onto the background. And because it has pigments in it, it's going to sit on top of everything a little bit more and be a little more visible. Whereas if I just used the Salvaged Patina spray stain, it would have just blended in. It still would have looked nice, but that was the reasoning for that one. And now, gotta add some sparkle. So I'm using the Kitsch Flamingo Distress Spritz, which is shimmery. I had shaken it up really, really well. You want to make sure it's really good and shooken up. And I press the nozzle like halfway and you get big splotchy bits. And then if you press the nozzle fully, it's more just a splattery, misty sort of a spray. So I did all of that. And again, dried it. I'll show at the end with my flashlight. It is sparkly. It's delicious. I love it. But we're not done, because I said I went to town. I did. So I'm using the stamp set from the February Simon Says Stamp Kit. This is the Vintage Love Notes stamp set. And I said this in the previous video where I unboxed it. They partnered with Tim Holtz for this stamp set. All of these bits in the set was artwork that he had licensed and whatnot for his ephemera, etc. So I was like stamping the music note stamp and then this butterfly image with just that same Frayed Burlap Distress ink onto the background, just building up all of these layers. So stamp those onto these backgrounds. Now we're getting into something I've never done before. This is yupo. This is not vellum. This is yupo. I tried it with vellum off camera. Vellum did not work at all. Yupo. This is Tim Holtz translucent yupo. You can use this with alcohol inks. It's not paper. Yupo is actually it's a plastic. So it's not paper. You cannot tear it. I just had this piece. I cut it in half. And I'm going to run this through with the embossing folder that comes in the kit. This is the Pinnacle Hearts embossing folder. You can emboss yupo. You can kind of emboss vellum with an embossing folder, but it's very hit and miss. And like I said, I tried it, and at least with this folder, it didn't work. It was a hot mess. This one, if I was to redo all this, I would choose a different folder. This one is very faint. And I'm actually going to fix this. And I put it through my machine, like I do with all the Simon folders in my Empress machine, which is one cutting plate. And you get a faint impression. I would try a more like detailed folder with this next time, because I'm going to do this again. It was fun. So for my second pass with the second piece, I added my metal shim this time because yupo's quite thin compared to cardstock. And I did get a better impression. So I'm going to play with this more. And you could alcohol ink this yupo and then run it through with an embossing folder. the sky's the limit. So like I said, though, you can't tear it. See? It's yupo. It's plastic. You cannot tear it. So I want it to look torn, though. And Tim showed this just in his most recent live. This is where I got the idea for this, because I never thought of this. Like embossing yupo and then cutting it with the decal cutter, all of that. I was like, oh. It's like new challenge unlocked. I'm going to have some fun, because I have all this yupo and I don't really play with my alcohol inks very often. But yeah, do I have a big old stack of yupo paper? Yes. So I'm going to play with it more. And I have this decal trimmer, which I've never shown on video. In fact, it's never come out of the box until I used this. So this is the Tim Holtz decal trimmer. And that's what it does, is a deckled edge. It's cool. And I've been meaning to use it. I've had people on my case. I know. But it's another thing of I have all the things and not enough time. And then I forget I have all the things, Anyway. So I use the decal trimmer. Awesome on yupo, because like I said, you can't really rip it. But this makes it look torn. So I just trim these pieces into like basically kind of two corners, because I obviously don't want to cover up, even though it's somewhat translucent, it's not like that translucent. And I don't want to cover up like all this background that, I had so much fun making. And now I'm going to sew it. That's how I'm going to attach it. And this is also where yupo is at the advantage over vellum, because I have sewn over vellum before. It's somewhat possible, but basically vellum immediately, like, sewing on vellum almost basically cuts the vellum apart. So you have to be very, very careful, and you have to have your stitches quite far apart. Otherwise, it just tears. Like, that's just because it's the nature of vellum. Whereas the yupo holds up. You can, like, as I'm showing here, any actual people who actually sew on fabric, and quilters and that, maybe look away, because what I do, they're probably like, you're breaking every single rule and you're going to break your machine. This machine's just for sewing on cards. It's a cheapo machine. I like it. It's a great little machine. And I put red thread in it, and I'm just sewing the yupo. And this is all I do. Everyone keeps asking me to show. I don't really have any like special tips or tricks. I just do like this. Get it in there, and I go back. I use the reverse little button, and I go back and forth, and I change the stitches from straight to zigzag. That's it. That's all I do. And I let it be messy, and I don't worry about it being straight. Nothing. I let the threads hang out, and that's all just part of the fun. And hopefully I'll be able to film it a little bit more here and there. This was actually hard for me to sew, because I had to use my phone, and I had it jury rigged to it was hanging like in front of my face. It was ridiculous, but it worked. So I sewed these yupo pieces onto both the backgrounds, all messy with the red thread, let everything hang off. And that was it for those. So now for my main focus on these, I'm using the large ghost stamp from the Boo Crazy set, and I'm stamping it onto more just distress watercolor paper using the VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink. This does also come in the kit, but I've had this ink for years. It's one of my favorites. So I'd stamped it with that, and then I'm stamping this floral image from the vintage Love Note set, and I'm going to stamp that with shaded lilac distress ink. I had done a video, it was last year's Halloween series, like the previous year's, one of the Halloween series. I had done a Halloween card with ghosts that I'd use floral pattern paper, because I was thinking of floral sheets, to make a little ghost. And that's been in the back of my head for a while. And then when I was looking at, this kit and this set and planning out this card, I was like, oh, yep. So that's what I did. And then I took Spun Sugar Distress Ink, and I'm just using a really tiny blending brush. This is an Altenew micro blending brush, and blending that to give them little rosy cheeks, because again, why not? And did all that. And then just as a final little finishing touch, I took Salvaged Patina Distress Ink. I'm just going to blend this just very lightly, just here and there on these, just to tie in that color, because I'd use that on the background, but also just gives them that little extra something. And then if you have the coordinating wafer dies, you can die cut these. They're also very easy to fussy cut, so whatever works. And yeah, these ghosts are so cute. These cards were fun to make. So after I had them cut out, I took my paper distresser thread cutter tool. I've shown this in a bunch of videos. I use this to rough up the edges of my cardstock. This also works on yupo, as I discovered as I was doing this. It will, because it's got a blade on the inside of it. So it did kind of chomp up the edges of the yupo too, which was kind of nice. Kind of hard to show on camera because I like to have a firm grip on my cardstock. The tool itself is fine. It's when the other times when I've shown using scissors, you need to be much more careful. Especially if there's yupo attached. Be very, very careful. But with this, you aren't going to cause yourself any harm. But I have a firm grip on the cardstock, and I just run the tool back and forth, and it roughs up all those edges. It also makes just an absolute mess. Like, it's fun. It's fun. So I worked my way around, roughing up all of those edges till I was happy with them, and roughing up the yupo. And that's also why I had a strong, like, kind of grip on it, because while like I had said, like, the yupo's pretty sturdy, it's going to hold up with this sewing. When you're running a tool like that across it, there's a chance too you're going to like tear it, because I went back and forth with all that sewing. You know, it's everything's a little more delicate, let's say. So another thing I did was I stamped that floral image from the vintage Love Note set. I'd stamped it onto some scraps of Schoolhouse Red cardstock and then cut them out. And I'd stamped them a couple times, and then I'd also stamped just like the top of the flower and just fussy cut that out. And then while I had the Schoolhouse Red cardstock out, I took the Ghost Hug stamp from the Boo Crazy set, and I am only inking up the word ghost, stamped it as you saw, and then cleaned off the stamp, and then I'll stamp the word ghost or hug underneath it. I could have just cut the stamp apart, but I have no problem doing that with my clear stamps. I don't know if I think I've done it like once with my Tim Holtz stamps. This was easy. If it had been way more finicky to do, I would have just trimmed the stamp apart and called it a day. But I did that, and then I die cut it with one of the Simon Says Stamp Nested Heart wafer dies. And then while I had those dies out, I took another scrap of just pink cardstock. I'd sprayed the Kitsch Flamingo Distress Spritz on it, so it's all shimmery cardstock, shimmery, sparkly. And also die cut it with some of the little Nested Heart wafer dies. So I've just got some little extra accessories. So the flower that I had stamped and cut out, I just kind of tucked it into that little pocket I'd created with the yupo and adhered it into place with some craft tacky glue. And then the ghost I popped up with foam squares. And then that individual little flower piece I just popped with a little thin foam square onto there. And then my sentiment and the other little die cut hearts I'm just adhering with craft tacky glue. I'm just going to tuck those into place and then add one more little heart. I end up having more because I die cut a bunch while I was doing other things, and I'll just save those for another project. So I'd also stamped a couple of the little like cancellation stamps with the Nocturne ink onto the background just to bring in more of the black, and then to really bring in more splatter. So black soot distress paint, specifically chosen because I'm splattering over yupo, which again, it's plastic, it's not paper, and distress paint dries permanent. So it takes a little bit longer to dry, the splatter, but it will dry and will not smear. Whereas a lot of times, some of the stuff I've used, if it ends up on top of like vellum, yupo, etc., it just pretty much never dries, but this does. So splattered that onto both of these card fronts with my little fan brush, and then immediately clean the fan brush and my little palette. Because like I just said, black soot distress paint dries permanently and it will stain. And acrylic paint, you don't want to leave it in your brush, it'll wreck it. So I set those aside to dry. And then I've got a couple panels of just white cardstock. These are going to go on the inside of the card. And yet again, these could be a card front. I was having so much fun. And then when I was done them, I was like, these totally could have been the cards, but whatever. So I stamped that music note stamp from the Love Notes, from the vintage Love Note set with the same frayed burlap ink. And then I edged the cardstock, just using my little blending tool with the frayed burlap, just to tie everything together. And then I've got that floral again, that I'm going to stamp with the Salvaged Patina Distress ink. The little ghost is from the Boo Crazy set, and I did the exact same thing to them that I did to the main one. So I'd stamped the floral with the shade lilac, added the pink, added the Salvaged Patina. You know, same. And then the sentiment is from the Boo Crazy set. So I love Boo. Love it. Love it. This all just... Who'da thunk? This year, 2025, is the year for ghost-themed Valentine cards, and I'm here for it. I'm loving it. It's fun. So, stamped the sentiments with Nocturne ink, added a couple of die-cut hearts, because I had a pile of them, and then adhered my little ghosty, and this will be the inside of the cards. The card bases are side-folding cards, not something I do very often. It's just habit. I just prefer top-folding cards. But in the kit, you get a pack of side-folding Schoolhouse Red cards. So they were sitting right there, convenient, going with it. So I adhered the inside panels to the inside, the outside panels to the outside, let that glue dry. And then my final little bit of embellishment, I had these rainbow gem stickers sitting out from the last project I did with the kit, because I'd pulled these stickers out to use on the previous cards. So the aqua color ones and the light pink ones just went with everything. So it just worked. So I just peeled them off and stuck them into place onto each of these cards, just using my little die pick, tucking the larger ones kind of under the edges of the ghost there. And once I get them where I want them, these cards are complete. So this was fun. And I'll try and show like the sparkle. The background is like really sparkly. It's hard to show on camera, but you can see it more on the little die cut hearts and a little bit there on like the lower left where my thumb is. You can see like, oh, that just like the distress spritz. It's so fun. Love them. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed. These were totally random. I meant it when I was all over the place. I was pulling out so many things. I have such an absolute disaster to clean up, but it was so fun. I need to do more making like this. So like I said in the intro, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below. I appreciate all of you hanging out with me, thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!